In a groundbreaking scientific discovery, NASA today revealed evidence of flowing liquid water on Mars, a finding which could suggest alien life forms have lived on the red planet. Satellite images have identified narrow streaks which appear on slopes during warm seasons and fade when it gets colder. Well, joining us now from Edinburgh is the TV science presenter, Dr. Bunhead, and here in the studio is Dr. Malcolm MacDonald from the Strathclyde Space Institute. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us. Malcolm, to you first of all, how exciting a discovery is this?
I think it is a really exciting and a really important piece of research. I mean, it's the culmination of 15 years worth of work to get to this point where they've identified the flowing water on the surface of Mars. And I think we hear a lot about groundbreaking science and breakthrough science, and sometimes it can be quite easy to get carried away by that work, but this really is that important and that much of a breakthrough, so it really is very, very important, very exciting.
Dr. Bunhead, as Malcolm said, people have known a bit about this for a long time, but this is the first kind of real evidence, isn't it?
Well, they've suspected, and this is really something which confirms their belief. They've had a far greater degree of scientific proof by finding water soaked into some salts, these perchlorates, and it's a really strong signature which says, yep, there's definitely got to be some liquid water around for that to happen. So yeah, it's very compelling evidence and a great coup for NASA.
Malcolm, the bookies have now slashed the odds of life on Mars to 22 to 1 from 100 to 1, I think. How likely is that then?
I think it depends how you define life. I think if we take it as any form of life, be it micro, single-cell organisms or something like that, anywhere on Earth where we find water, we find life. In the Atacama Desert, the only places we find life is where we find small bits of water. So I think it certainly slashes the odds, and I think the bookies are probably onto a good thing to do that. Whether there is life, it's not going to be like us. We're not going to suddenly find wee green men walking around on Mars, but the chances are we're likely to find something. I think the really exciting thing is the fact that we've been looking at Mars for a long time. We've put a lot of work into Mars, and if we find life on Mars where we thought it was quite inhospitable, then it opens up the possibility of life being fairly abundant in the solar system. If we look hard enough, then maybe we're going to find it not just on Mars, but elsewhere in the solar system as well.
So this could have massive consequences or repercussions, couldn't it, Dr. Bunhead?
Oh yes, though as one of the guys from NASA said, at the moment it shows absolutely no proof whatsoever that there is life on Mars. And when they talk about life, they always talk about potential life in the past, certainly not in the present. The conditions are so salty that, as far as we understand, absolutely nothing could exist in the water that they're looking at in the moment, and these little rivulets running only about 16 feet wide down the side of the mountain. But it's still compelling evidence that life might have been there, and it offers other interesting possibilities as well for future missions to Mars.
Before we move on to the future missions, what kind of life might there have been then?
Sarah, the guest said, I doubt there were little green men. They're looking for biosignatures, signs of tiny little bits of life that were there. In the same way that scientists don't often find certain animals, we look at the traces of life that they've left behind, if you like, their visits to the toilet on a microbial level. And we're looking for these kind of things to show evidence that they have been there. So it is very, very small creatures, if you like, the smallest things we can imagine. The bacteria, this kind of thing, which is of course another problem for the future mission, this idea of bacteria, but not theirs, ours, that we'll be taking to Mars.
Yeah, because Mars One is preparing to send people on a one-way mission to Mars in 2026. So what kind of environment are they going to find then? Well,
Mars is a hugely hostile environment, and I think Mars One is based around the idea of a reality TV show, and that's how they're going to fund it, and it's a really interesting model to fund future space exploration. In terms of the technology required to get to Mars, that there's huge obstacles in the way. But the fact that we've identified the possibility of some running water, the fact that we know there's ice at the caps as well, means we can start to think about the idea of living off the land and actually not having to take everything with us to Mars in order to survive. But even then, within a decade, to think about having people on the surface of Mars is incredibly ambitious and very, very challenging.
Do you fancy being on that mission, Malcolm?
If Mars One is not a return trip, I think I'd want the return trip. I think I'll wait for that one, thank you.
What about you, Dr. Bunhead? Does it change the idea of the mission going out there? Does it make it more viable if there's water?
Yeah, in part. I mean, there are a number of key factors that they have to investigate, and as the NASA representatives say, that they investigate this the same way as they've done the trip to the moon and so forth. We go step by step. They crawl before they can walk, and a lot of what's happening now is just deep investigation to really suss out the lay of the land. The 2020 mission is going to do things like work out whether they can extract oxygen from the vast amounts of carbon dioxide that are there.
And we will have to leave it there, but absolutely fascinating stuff, and thank you both very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.